He wasn't the one scoring the goals. He wasn't the one making the saves. But for millions of hockey fans across Western Canada, he was the voice that made every moment mean something. Today, we lost him. John Garrett, known to the hockey world simply as Cheech, has passed away at the age of 74. And if you grew up watching Canucks hockey, you already know exactly what that means. John Murdoch Garrett was born on the 17th of June 1951 in Trenton, Ontario, a small Canadian town that had no idea it was producing one of the most beloved figures in hockey broadcasting history. Standing just 5'8", Garrett wasn't the biggest goaltender on the ice, but what he lacked in size, he made up for in grit, personality, and an encyclopedic knowledge of the game that would serve him long after his playing days were over. He was originally drafted by the St. Louis Blues in the 1971 NHL entry draft, but his early career took him through the minor leagues before he found a real home in the World Hockey Association, a wild, loose, and wonderfully chaotic league that gave fringe players a real shot. From 1973 to 1979, Garrett played in the WHA for teams like the Minnesota Fighting Saints, the Toronto Toros, and the Birmingham Bulls. When the WHA folded and 4 of its teams were absorbed into the NHL, Garrett made the jump too, landing with the Hartford Whalers, the Quebec Nordiques, and eventually the Vancouver Canucks. 207 NHL games, a 1-3 season professional career. Not a Hall of Fame playing resume, but a career full of character moments that hockey historians love to dig up. Here's one you might not know. At the 1983 NHL All-Star Game, Garrett stepped in as a last-minute replacement for an injured Richard Brodeur. He was the Canucks' only representative at the game, and by the end of the second period, he was voted the game's MVP. That's right, a backup goalie from Vancouver was about to win the NHL All-Star MVP. And then Wayne Gretzky happened. The Great One scored 4 times in the final 10 minutes, stole the show, and took home the award. Garrett finished the game with a story instead of a trophy, but honestly, knowing Cheech, he probably told that story better than anyone. When Garrett retired before the 1985-86 season, hockey didn't lose him, it just moved him upstairs. In 1986, he joined CBC's Hockey Night in Canada as a color commentator, and almost immediately, people realized this man was born for the microphone. He had the knowledge, the warmth, the humor, and crucially, he could explain what was happening on the ice in a way that made both lifelong fans and casual viewers feel like insiders. By 1991, he was calling conference finals, 8 in a row. In 1998, he made the jump to what was then CTV Sportsnet, now Rogers Sportsnet, and that's where his legacy truly cemented itself. For more than 2 decades, Garrett became the color commentator on Vancouver Canucks regional broadcasts, forming a beloved on-air partnership with play-by-play voice John Shorthouse and host Dan Murphy. For a generation of Canucks fans, those 3 voices were Hockey Night in Vancouver. But here's what the tributes pouring in today keep coming back to. It wasn't just the analysis, it wasn't just the career stats and the broadcast credentials, it was him. People who worked alongside Garrett for decades describe a man who showed up with professionalism, humor, and genuine warmth every single time. He loved the Canucks, he loved the Blue Jays, he loved being a grandfather, and above everything else, those who knew him best say he was devoted to his wife Sharon. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman said the league was stunned and saddened by the news, noting that he had personally seen Garrett just days before on Friday night in Utah, where Cheech was calling the Mammoths' first ever home playoff game with the same energy and passion he'd brought for 4 decades. The Vancouver Canucks organization called him a cherished member of our family. Sportsnet called him a beloved colleague, friend, and one of the most familiar voices in Canadian hockey. And John Shannon, a longtime friend and television producer, said it best of all. He did his job with the right level of professionalism, with gravitas and humor. He loved the Canucks, the Blue Jays, and being a grandfather. Most of all, he loved his wife Sharon. He was the best of us. John Garrett passed away suddenly on the 28th of April 2026. He was 74 years old. He played 13 seasons of professional hockey. He spent nearly 40 years behind a microphone. He was a grandfather, a husband, a friend, and by every account, one of the genuinely good ones. For Canucks fans, and really, for anyone who ever turned on a Canadian hockey broadcast and felt like they were watching the game with a friend today hurts. Rest easy, Cheech. You were a legend. If this tribute meant something to you, hit like and subscribe. Drop a memory of John Garrett in the comments.